Greetings viewers, JLB back with a new video, and this time we're going to be diving into one of the most obscure and lesser known stop motion animated video TV series ever created by the late great Art Clokey, God bless his soul. Now, you might know Art Clokey as the guy who created Gumby, but you probably don't know him as the creator for Davy and Goliath. Now, when I say the name Davy and Goliath, many of you will probably scratch your heads and saying, who? Well, see, Davy and Goliath was an American clay animated children's television series created by, of course, the creator of Gumby himself, Art Clokey, as well as his wife, Ruth Clokey, and a fellow by the name of Dick Sutcliffe. And the production was commissioned originally by the United Lutheran Church in America, and later by the Lutheran Church in America, now known as the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America. So yeah, when you hear the word church involved in a television production, you probably know it's going to have family-friendly values relating to it. The main premise of the show focuses on the main characters. Davy, or maybe his little sister, or his dog Goliath, or maybe his friends Nathaniel and Jonathan. Oh, and we'll get a bit of an impact on why the show was so important, and as to exactly how those two characters will fit into the series. But for now, let's talk about how Davy and Goliath got started. Way back in 1958, Franklin Clark Fry, the president of the United Lutheran Church of America, or ULCA, put aside about $1 million to fund the production of a future television program for children. Soon after, the ULCA contracted with Clokey Productions Incorporated, headed by the creators of Gumby, Art Clokey and his wife Ruth, in order to create a new children's show, like I mentioned, Davy and Goliath. The scripts were written by a children's book author by the name of Nancy Moore in consultation with the church. Now, Moore would go on to pen several episodes of the CBS Radio Mystery Theater in the 1970s and early 80s. But back to the premise at hand. Now, the ULCA knew that Art Clokey was a big, successful sensation when he created Gumby. So they and Art teamed up to make the first Davy and Goliath episode in 1960 called Lost in a Cave, which would be the first shown in syndication in 1961. Now, of course, in this premiere episode, the figures were made entirely out of clay with some latex and rubber clothing showing visible seams. And the scenery was also mostly made out of clay. The early voices included Hal Smith, who did a number of voices including Davy's father, Dick Beals, who was the voice of Davy, and Ginny Tyler, who did the voice for Sally and Davy's mother. Yeah, I forgot to mention that Davy has a little sister named Sally. I kind of mentioned it, but I couldn't think of her name. Now, those three actors that I mentioned did many other voices as well on the show. After making the pilot, Lost in a Cave, Clokey made The Wild Goat, Stranded on an Island, and The Winner in early '61. In these episodes, the clay figures were now clothed with actual cloth, and more model buildings and trees were added, making the episodes look somewhat a bit more realistic. Now, in 1961, the series of these 4 episodes began airing for free on local television stations nationwide back in the day, ranging from ABC, NBC, and CBS, the big 3, all the way to independent stations. Now, occasionally, 2 or more stations in the same market aired the show at different times, and many stations ran these episodes leading into the network, Saturday morning lineups. Other stations ran them in religious Sunday morning lineups, which I think really does fit the premise of the show. Between various evangelist programs back in the day. Now, by 1964, the show was airing in over 90% of U.S. television market, which was huge back in the day. The only 10% that didn't air it probably weren't involved with the ULCA. And like I said, the scenery in the show got a bit more realistic. And the clay figures had established looks and consistent sizes. Now, at the closing of the episodes, the title "The End" was displayed in regular print rather than the Davy and Goliath logo print type, which most likely opens up the show. Now, the background music that was used on the show originated from sources as the Capitol High Q production music library, which could be heard on shows like The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet, Donna Reed's Show, Dennis the Menace, and other 1950s sitcoms. A few of these background tracks could also be heard on the late 50s, early 60s Hanna-Barbera cartoons. But by 1963, Nancy Weibel was now providing voices for female characters such as Davy's mother. Norma Macmillan, who also provided various cartoon character voices such as that of Sweet Polly Purebred in a show we'll talk about later, Underdog. And she could also be heard as the voice of numerous children and female characters. Davy's personality, as the show progressed, became slightly tougher, and within a couple episodes, a bit rebellious. Overall, Davy's character remained good-natured. He himself was older, but the scope of the show itself involved no big changes, no overarching plots or anything, nothing. By 1963, production on Davy and Goliath ended up winding down, and in some episodes, in addition to a placard showing "The End," a screen showed that the show was produced in association with the ULCA. And of course, it was featured at the beginning of the episode too, most likely. It will be continued airing episodes of a different format way into the 2000s, I believe. Well, most likely the 1970s, with a small appearance in the 2000s for a Mountain Dew soda commercial, but anyway. In 1965, the first 30-minute holiday special for Davy and Goliath was formed, called Christmas Lost and Found. The episode was overtly religious in nature and it distanced itself from traditional Christmas figures such as Santa Claus, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, with religious Christmas songs being played. This would also be the last episode which featured Dick Beals as Davy's voice actor. 2 years later, in '67, three 30-minute holiday specials were aired. The New Year's Promise in January, Happy Easter in March, and the Halloween Whodunit in October, which I have seen, and that's how I came to know Davy and Goliath. But by then, the background music changed to an unknown music library. Davy was close to the age of a junior high school student and was voiced by Norma Macmillan. Also, the Easter special confronted the death of a loved one as Davy's beloved grandmother, off camera, died within hours of a fun-filled visit. Yeah, kind of a little bit touchy, if I do say so myself. However, after those specials, the LCA, which was the ULCA, now called the LCA, and Clokey Productions began funding another series of Davy and Goliath episodes in 1969, to begin airing in 1971. But things were definitely changing. Davy was now at the age of a junior high school student, occasionally being rebellious. And of course, more touchy subjects were introduced, such as racism, gang, conservation, crime, other serious, timely issues. And that is where those two characters who are best friends of Davy that I mentioned come into play. Their names were Nathaniel and Jonathan, and they were African Americans. They were some of the first ever African American characters to appear as friends of a television show's lead character. Huge for the time. and definitely worth of note, because as far as I'm concerned, racism has no place in our country, past, present, or future. Now, of course, there was another 30-minute episode in 1971 called School Who Needs It. And ultimately, the final regular series of episodes was produced that year. And Jonathan appeared in most of those episodes. The 1972 episode, What's His Name? Well, the episodes, I mean. They included What's His Name? The Zillion Dollar Combo, and Chicken. In 1973, production of this series wound down once again, but in 1975 there was a 30-minute summer camp special called To the Rescue. It marked the official end of Davy and Goliath for almost 30 years. That was until 2001, when Davy and Goliath were seen as part of a Mountain Dew commercial. And then, of course, there was the 2004 Christmas special called Davy and Goliath Snowboard Christmas, a holiday special that addressed both religious and ethnic diversities, as Davy demonstrated his snowboarding skills to his friends, a Jewish boy named Sam, and a Muslim girl named Yasmin. During the course of the show, they got caught in an avalanche and ended up trapped in a cave. Goliath went for help. Davy and his new friends found out that it weren't all that different. And of course, they learned about the different holidays they celebrated. The Jewish holiday of Hanukkah, the Christian holiday of Christmas, and a Muslim holiday that I've honestly never heard of until now, called Eid, I believe it's called. If any of you out there know about this holiday, please don't hesitate to tell me about it in the comments. In all seriousness, is Davy and Goliath worth revisiting? The simple answer? Definitely. I mean, sure, if you're not entirely okay with whatever the ELCA has to talk about, if you're part of a different church, that's fine. But it's the values alone that make Davy and Goliath worth it. Plus, it was made by our Clokey. And if you can't trust the guy who made Gumby, what are you gonna do? That wraps up another episode. Thanks so much for joining me, and definitely stick around for more animated talk. Make sure to check out my last video, and leave a comment down below, or subscribe or like the video, and I'll see you all next time. Until then, farewell, my fellow Animaniacs.